Okay, so this Hangout's now live. That means that people are going to start joining in a minute. And I'm here with Martin from the London Java community. And let's see how many people actually join. So Martin, oh, you're walking. You're
I muted you by accident. I don't know how.
Yeah. Well, no, it's
all right. Okay, I was on mute.
Ah,
Okay.
that's better.
Yes. Okay, I was speaking to no one. All right.
Cool. All right, brilliant.
So I'm here with Martin from the London Java community, and Martin is actually on the bus going home. We just finished the dinner for the Java community process. We are here in London, and you know, there's a lot of the people from the executive committee of the JCP here in London discussing the future of the Java standard process. And last Friday, there was a decision from the courts in the U.S. that you know, a lot of developers are asking about things and what does that mean. And Martin, I see that some people are joining on right now. So you know, for those for you that you're joining now, we're just giving a few minutes until people actually join in. But you know, for those that are watching this recorded, we're just giving a brief introduction here, and basically, you know, Oracle sued Google for implementing a incompatible Java virtual machine on Android, and this has been going on for some time. Google had, you know, the first court decision basically ruled out that Google was infringing any patents, but yeah. So Otavio here is asking, maybe wait some minutes before people in. Yes, we're just, you know, if we're joining right now, and we're just kind of briefly talking a few things here. It's me and Martin from the London Java community. I'm Bruno from SoJava. And we're both try to discuss here. The idea is that you know, you can ask questions on the side, right? And you know, and then whenever and we're gonna try. The whole idea here is not us giving any long discussion. Is more that we try to answer some questions, because we understand that this whole process between Oracle and Google raise a lot of questions, raise a lot of points for people, and developers are unsure what to do. There's a lot of FUD. There's a lot of weird blogs out there saying different things, and I understand that sometimes it's hard. We're technical people. It's one thing to announce a new version of Java. It's another thing to announce a court decision. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to at least, you know, get some things going. And if you join already, there's a few people online. We're just kind of giving this brief introduction because you know, people are going to watch this recorded later, so it's better that you know, at least they see something. But if you're already online, if you want to go ahead and start asking some questions, the whole idea here is try to understand what doubts you have and how we can help to clarify. So as I was saying, basically, you know, Oracle sued Google for implementing a non-compatible Java VM, or actually a non-compatible Java. Was not really a Java VM, but on Android. Then you know, there was Oracle accused Google of copyright infringement and patent infringement. The courts have basically declared that Google did not infringe any of the patents, and declared that Google did infringe, but it infringed the copyrights of APIs, and the court ruled that APIs were not copyrightable. So there was in a way a big win on the Google side. And then Oracle appealed to the courts of appeals in the U.S. And the ruling of that court came out last Friday, and I think that's why a lot of people are asking questions right now. And that court basically reverted this decision that APIs are not copyrightable, and the courts basically announced, decided that or declared that yes, APIs are copyrightable, and that the whole structure and organization of the Java APIs, of the 37 package that's Oracle is accusing Google of using, are in fact copyrightable, and it's now sending back to the lower court to decide. So basically, it's sending back to the court to decide what's going to happen. So right now, nothing's decided, and it's just some initial discussions. I'm just waiting 2 more minutes here until we start. I still see some people joining in, but I really would like to ask you that already joined to add some questions here, because the whole idea here is that's a discussion especially for focus on Java user groups, because both me, Bruno Souza from Java, and Martin, that is here with us. He's on mute right now because he's inside a bus, and so Martin is from the London Java community. So we are already getting questions from our members, from the companies that are parts of our user groups, and so I'm sure that you, a user group leader, you're also getting some issues and questions. So I think it's better that that we can all discuss a little bit here and try to answer those questions. I did see, of course, that it's a good time in Brazil right now for people to join. It's not a good time for people in London because it's 11:30 here already, 11:40 already. So we're about to start. And but so I see there's a lot of people from Brazil. So if you are a Brazilian and you want to ask a question in Portuguese, that's okay. You can ask the question in Portuguese. You just go on the side of the screen over there. You ask a question in Portuguese, and I will translate and answer the question in English. The whole discussion here will be in English, because the whole idea is that other Java groups that can't participate right now can then join in. One thing that I'm also going to do is that there was some discussion on the Java user groups and the Java champions mailing list in the last few days. So one thing that's I'll kind of quickly browse through the questions that were asked on those 2 lists and see if we can answer some of those questions also. At least we get a record here for people to watch later. Okay, so Martin, I think it's about for us to start. Do you wanna? I've said a lot of things right now, and do you wanna say a few words?
I think firstly, for everybody out there, is don't panic. Like a lot of these decisions, it's not as bad for the day-to-day Java developer as certain blog posts and certain people have made it out to be. There are 2 really important things here. One is that it still needs to go back to the Supreme Court in the US for a final decision. And this is only in the US jurisdiction as well. So if you are a developer in the European Union, South America, in China, India, Africa, a lot of this doesn't actually necessarily apply to you. But outside of that, the decision was a very interesting one because it's opened up the sort of Pandora's box. If, for example, you yourself have developed an API which adds 2 integers and returns an integer, and someone copies it off you, in theory, this opens up the potential for you to open up a lawsuit against whoever's copied your API, and you can say, well, my API is now under copyright law, and therefore I can go and sue you over this. I think the interesting thing from the court ruling, which a lot of people are sort of trying to understand, is the idea of fair use. And I think, Bruno, you commented on this on the Java user group's leaders list, that it's actually okay in theory to copy an API as long as it's deemed to be of fair use, which means there's no alternative way of coding that API or defining that API. So again, adding two integers, there's probably only a single way you can define that. And that you haven't caused any financial harm to the original organization. And I think this is where Oracle is really complaining. Oracle is claiming that Google didn't copy the APIs with the idea of fair use because Google has quite clearly made a financial gain which is of a detriment to Oracle. So I think that's what the lawyers are arguing over. What it really means to us as developers, well, I think we'll have to wait and see for at least a year or two until the Supreme Court decision is made.
Yeah, that's right. You're totally right, Martin. I think that's it's still going to be some time away. You know, even if the courts are really fast, there's not going to be a decision in the next few months. It's going to take some months, and you know. I don't understand a lot about the U.S. court system, but as I understand, you know, even if this decision is upheld on the minor court, I think Google can still appeal to the Supreme Court, and so if they do, then this whole thing still take a little bit more time. So I think that you know, we're still going to take some time. Until this whole thing happens, and we are always trying to digest what exactly is going on right now. So I think that's, you know, we have to live with that. So Martin, there are some questions coming on right now. Let me try to start by answering, you know, this. So there's a question about the Java in open source. So first of all, let me just kind of quickly give a brief, I think I already did a little bit, but I see that more people are joining in, but a brief overview of the court's decision this last Friday. So basically, as I said, the lower courts judged that, and you know, in Martin, you mentioned fair use, right? So the lower court did judge that Google did infringe, or I mean, did use the code from Oracle, not the implementation, but the code for the API. You know, the method calls, and names, and, you know, names of classes and all that of you know, the Java API, and no one is disputing that actually, right? So you know, Google is not disputing that. The courts are not disputing that. That's a clear thing. So, but the lower court judged that you know, Google couldn't be infringing this because the APIs are not copyrightable. So Oracle appealed, and the appeals court decided that APIs are copyrightable, and that you know, the whole structure and the organization of the Java API, you know, those are copyrightable, and so since the lower court had already judged that that Google did infringe that, now the appeals court is sending back to decide that, you know, if what Google did is or not fair use, because the lower courts had got to you know, it did not decide on the fair use, right? So fair use, as Martin said, is a fairly undefined you know, law, not really a law, but it's like a fairly undefined term that you know, I'm not sure if it's subjective is the word, but it has a lot of discussion around exactly what it means. So it's something that it has to be decided pretty much on a case-by-case basis. And so the appeals court is sending back the process to the lower court to decide if what Google did is or not a fair use, right? So that's the next step of this discussion. Okay, so let's kind of start answer questions here. So I'm getting Edson's question here. If Java is open source, why could Oracle sue Google about copyright of an open source project? So yeah, so basically Java is available under a series of licenses, right? You can get a proprietary license from Oracle that Oracle charges money for. You can get a open source license through OpenJDK, for example, that is free, but then you have to follow the OpenJDK licensing, right? And so Google did not. And there's another license that you can actually use if you do not want Oracle's code, or if you do not want the OpenJDK code. You can also just get the license for the spec license, right? And you can re-implement the specification, right? But if you do that, the spec license requires that you implement a compatible implementation. So basically, you have three ways of getting a license for Java. One is what Edson is saying, it's an open source license, GPL, with class path exception, that you can get through the OpenJDK project. That is free. Anyone can get that license. You only have to follow the GPL plus class path exception rule. The second license that you can get is also a free. It's a fairly free license. You still have to pay for the TCK license, but there's no royalties. It's just you pay to run the TCK, and that license allows you to re-implement from scratch the whole specification, and that license requires you to be compatible, right? The third license that you can get is what we call a proprietary license from Oracle, and that's I have no idea exactly what the terms are for that license, but you can license the source code from Oracle, and through that license you can probably do incompatible things. You can probably do change the code any way you want, because it is a license directly with Oracle proprietary. So basically, those are the three like official possibilities of the Java licensing, and Google did not take any of the three, right? That's kind of part of that's what Oracle says, that Google did not take any of the three. That's a fact that none of this three license is what Google decided to do. So Google decided to get the source code, or actually maybe even the specification. I'm not sure exactly. There's some people say that's well, actually no. Google did use the Harmony project from Apache. There wasn't a project that was trying to implement the specification from scratch. So so Google got Harmony project to use to choose the class libraries, and implemented a different virtual machine that they call Dalvik. And so through that license, through the Harmony project, Google didn't take any of those three licenses. So basically, now specific to Edson's questions, if Java is open source, right? So if Google had used OpenJDK to implement their Java version, and even if it was incompatible, right? They could have used the OpenJDK code, but they didn't do this. So basically, Oracle is not suing Google for copyright infringement on an open source project, because Google did not use the OpenJDK source code, right? Okay. So there's some other questions here. Also, So some people on the internet argue that if Oracle wins the copyright claim, oops, let me select this. So some people argue on the internet that if Oracle wins the copyright claim, any Java compiled code of ours will also be infringing Oracle's copyrights. Is it true? Well, actually, Martin, you want to say something?
I don't think it is. In particular, if you're using a public interface, copyright. Sorry, Oracle is explicitly giving you the rights to use that interface. And I actually believe, and this is where we probably need a lawyer's opinion, but I'm pretty sure that if you have downloaded Oracle's JDK and you've signed their license agreement to use that JDK, that you've also been given permission to use the APIs freely in your application. So I'm pretty sure, at least from my interpretation, that it's perfectly safe to use Java's APIs, and there's no issue. It's whether you make a copy of those APIs, which is what Oracle claimed Google has done, is where you fall into legal gray territory, as it were.
Yeah, that's right. So Martin, I think you touched on an important point right there. Let me just clarify you very to everyone. Neither me nor Martin, we are not lawyers, right? So do not take anything we're saying here as a legal advice. Do not take anything you're saying here as a legal experts. We might be saying lots of weird stuff in terms of the legal parts. So we're just trying to make sense of this ourselves. We do understand a lot about licensing and everything, but that's we're not lawyers. Also, the other thing I want to clarify: neither me nor Martin, we don't work for Oracle. We don't work for Google. We are Java's group leaders. We work in our own companies. We don't have any. At least I don't have any stake in either one of the companies, so we're just trying to make sense of things here. But in terms of what Edson asked here, there was actually a blog post on the internet that claimed that because inside the binary of Java you do have the symbols of the library, then if the library is copyrightable, then those symbols that's inside the binary, they infringe Oracle's copyright. So about this particular problem, the license when you develop Java, either using Oracle's proprietary JDK or using the OpenJDK, it is part of the license that says that you can develop applications using Java, and that you can link that code, you can link Java code with your code, for example. So actually, on OpenJDK, the class path extension, the class path exemption class, it specifically tells you that you can link your code with the Java libraries, and basically what's inside the binary, what's inside the executable, is linking information, so you can link to other Java classes. So it's explicit permitted on the license. It has nothing to do with with reusing the license. The whole thing here, reusing the API. The whole thing here is when you get the API and you re-implement the API, and I think that's what's at stake here. So no, I definitely don't think. I think that linking is part of any development. The licenses explicitly allow you to link code, and that's what goes inside the. Actually, Martin is an expert on performance and bytecodes, and so Martin, when you compile a Java class, you get inside the Java class, you get reference to the symbols, right? Those reference to other classes. So why are those references there in the bytecode?
Sorry, I'm not getting a very clear signal at the moment.
Okay, so, yeah, so yes, I'm saying that you are an expert on performance and bytecodes and internal VM stuff, and I'm saying that whenever you compile Java program into bytecodes, inside the bytecode go symbols that reference other methods like um, string println or whatever method that
Yeah,
is.
it's effectively for lookup tables and for fast lookups on a simple table. But I wouldn't consider those to be part of an API in any way, shape, or form. So that's certainly not a part of any managed runtime, whether it be the JVM or .NET CLR or the Python or Ruby runtime. That would be considered as being an actual API that day-to-day developers would use. So I don't think that is a concern for any Java developer going forward.
Okay. So I think that question is done. So now the other question is from Michael, and he says if there is any. Oops, let me select the question here. Okay, so what is if there is any, what could be the impact if Oracle makes the point in this process and the API becomes copyrightable? What could be the reflection in open source and related ecosystem? So that is a very good question. I think that's the biggest thing that we're seeing on the internet right now is that it seems that by Oracle getting through of this and asserting their APIs are copyrightable, it might mean the end of the world, right, or something like that, or might mean something really bad for open source and for other projects. And I think there is. So first of all, the impression that I have is that, well, I think later I'm going to say what I think about each one of the companies doing this. But the impression that I have is that Oracle is using everything they can to prevent Google from creating an incompatible fork, and they might have gone too far, right? That's whenever if you're using if you're preventing people from using APIs, that might be a big problem. So that's my impression. Some people are saying that software is copyrightable, and that means APIs are copyrightable, and that the courts are not creating anything extra, right? And I'm pretty sure that's going to be the interpretation of a lot of people. I'm sure that's what the Oracle lawyers think. Honestly, I'm not sure. I was talking to some people from Europe. It seems that in Europe, for example, APIs are explicitly non-copyrightable. I remember some discussions. I'm not 100% sure, but I remember some discussions back in Brazil. It seems, I think that in Brazil APIs are explicitly not copyrightable, but it's some people are saying that on the laws in the U.S. APIs are copyright. Actually, I'm not even saying some people. Actually, the decision from the courts on this moment right now explicitly says that APIs are copyrightable and that it's just applying the law. So from the interpretation of the judge on this particular situation, it is saying that APIs were always copyrightable, and and that's it. So I'm not sure if that's true. If the view of the judge holds that APIs were always copyrightable, then it just means business as usual, I guess. Now, I think that the impression that everyone has that APIs are not copyrightable, it might be might be the fact that a lot of people are using APIs considering that they are not copyrightable. I know that interfaces to access some systems, for example, have been copied. I know, for example, that there are some open source projects that implement interfaces for other systems, so they might be affected. So I think that if some open source project like reverse engineering a API to replicate that API or to access that API, they might be infringing the copyright of the copyright owner. My impression that I have from talking to people is that uh, people did not realize that APIs were copyrightable. I think that most developers think that they can't copyright an API. On the other hand, there was one article, for example, that was mentioning that the vendors that did not copy Amazon's API to their cloud environment did the right thing. So if vendors decided to create another API instead of using the API of the largest cloud vendor, maybe they did think that APIs were copyrightable and they couldn't do that. So I'm not sure exactly what is the law here, and I think that we probably going to have to see. Now, there's one thing. It might be that APIs are copyrightable, but reverse engineering an API to do an integration work, right? That may fall under fair use. So if the vendor does not provide you a way to access their system, and you need to access their system, and you can't license the product or something like that, maybe using their API to access the system is a legal way to do it because it is fair use. So I think this is what Google will try to do right now. Is Google might try to prove that what they're doing with the Java VM, with the Java API, it's fair use. As I said before, fair use is, I think it's a case-by-case thing. I don't think it is a clear cut. I think Google is going to have to work out and prove exactly what it means that what they're doing is fair use. And I think that's the next step, right? I think Google now has to prove that that's what they're doing is fair use. Now, what Oracle and the judge said on the ruling of last Friday is that Oracle had 3 ways of licensing the Java VM and the Java APIs. I already talked about this. The proprietary licensing, the license of the spec that requires compatibility, and the license of the OpenJDK that requires respecting the GPL license. And I said that first, but the proprietary licensing, it's Oracle licenses under royalties. So basically, if you license Oracle source code, Oracle will charge you royalties for it. That means you're going to charge a per device or per user or whatever. Oracle is going to charge you royalties. If you license the API, Oracle will charge you a fee for the TCK, right? So you run the compatibility test. And if you run with OpenJDK, you have to follow and of course, if you license the API, Oracle will charge a fee for the TCK, but okay, so Martin is saying here that he has to drop out. Martin, thanks a lot. Thanks for trying. So Martin said that his phone is out of power.
Yep, sorry everyone. But you can always grab my contact details of Bruno at the end of the session, and I can always give my viewpoint from the London Java community's point of view anyway.
Okay.
Have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Martin.
Bye.
So getting back, I'll return back quickly here. So there's 3 ways for each license Java. One, you can license Oracle source code. If you license Oracle source code, Oracle charges you a royalty. So it's per user or per device. I don't know. Those are I haven't ever seen one of those agreements. I'm not sure exactly how Oracle charges, but they do say they charge a royalty. If you license if you implement the library from the JCP, that means that you do have to implement it compatible, and you have to pass the TCK. If you pass the TCK, Oracle does charge from companies. Oracle does charge a fee to run the TCK, right? And as Apache has proven as in the past, Oracle will not allow a Apache licensed implementation. That's Oracle considered that that's not the right business. Or Oracle will allow a GPL implementation based on OpenJDK, but will not allow an Apache licensed open source implementation. So that's one of the discussions that's going on for the last few years. And the third way for you to license is you can use the OpenJDK project. If you use the OpenJDK project, you don't have to pay royalties, you don't have to pay Oracle, but you have to follow the GPL licensing scheme, right? That means you have to relicense the code under the GPL, etc. So, so basically, trying to answer Michael's question is that since Oracle, that's what the judge says, that Oracle has 3 different licensing schemas. So Google is going to have to prove that none of those licensing schemas work it for whatever reason, and that whatever Google did is fair use. So that's the next step, and a lot of people is signing up to this view that whatever Google did is fair use, and I think that's the next step that Google is going to have to try to prove. Okay, I think that's kind of done. There is another question here that's from Edson that says, if APIs really become copyrightable, I guess it will become even more important to use open source code to guarantee we won't be sued about in the future. So actually, okay, you have 2 questions here. One is if this is correct, and the other one is the role of the JCP. So I'm going to start by answering the first question. So I think that, first of all, I think that using open source code is always your best bet, right? I think open source, it's if you use open source code, you're fine in terms of copyrights. The license allows you to do and change and work on the code. So there shouldn't be any problems if you use the open source code, right? So if you get OpenJDK and you change OpenJDK and you re-implement things, and you even if you use OpenJDK to create incompatible implementations, right? The OpenJDK code is GPL, and you are allowed to do. So yes, you are allowed to create a different non-compatible VM that uses OpenJDK code, and you're fine with that, right? As long as it is a GPL, it's GPL license, you are following the OpenJDK process and licensing schema. So if you want to do something that's incompatible, just I think you should use open source. So yes, if you are using the open source project, if you're basing your code out of open source, and if you're following the licensing schema, and you may have to refer to a lawyer to exactly what you need to do to follow the schema, the licensing, you're fine, right? I mean, there's no copyright problems when you use an open source project. So it doesn't matter if there is an API or not, if the API is there or not, it doesn't matter. If you use the OpenJDK source code and you license your code following the OpenJDK licensing schema, that's the GPL, then you're fine. I understand why Google did not choose that way of doing it, because once they use a GPL, they would have to relicense whatever they're doing under the GPL, and worse than that, it's the other codes that's on Android that relied on that VM, would also have to be GPL, right? If Google has any other code inside Android that ties in to their VMs internally, to Dalvik, I'm pretty sure they would have to have this whole thing as GPL. That poses a problem, right? Because the business model of Android is that Google licenses the source code to manufacturers. So, for example, Samsung licenses Android source code from Google and modifies that source code and releases a version of Android that is, that's from Samsung. Other manufacturers do the same thing, and if this whole thing was GPL, that means that whatever Samsung need to do would have to be GPL also. So it is complicated for the Android ecosystem to run on top of a GPL based source code, right? So and here is kind of the funny thing, right? Because Google gets that Google gets the Java runtime, not the Java runtime, but Google implemented a Java equivalent VM, and by doing this allowed Java developers to use Java tools to develop a code for that VM and using all the Java APIs. And now Google, of course, Google puts this as open source. Yes, so there is an open source version of Android, but also Google licenses that to other companies. So I totally get it. I think Google is doing the right thing. It's creating an ecosystem, and it's benefiting from this ecosystem. So Samsung licenses the Android source code from Google to create their device. That's very good, right? But now Google disagrees of licensing the Java source code from Oracle. I think this is the asymmetry here, and I think that's where my impression is that Google is going to have to prove that they're licensing that source code to other companies, but they are not licensing from Oracle, and that this is fair use. I'm not sure how that works, but I think this is the challenge that Google we're gonna have to prove that, right? So answering Edison's question, yes, I think using open source is the best way of doing it. But let me just say something here. For you, Java developer, this has very, very little impact on what you're doing. You're already using a compatible VM. You're already using OpenJDK. You're already using, the IBM or Oracle's or whatever, a Zeus virtual machine. I don't know exactly whose virtual machine you're using, but you are using compatible versions of virtual machines, and by doing this, you are participating on one of those three licensing schemas, right? Because if you're using a Zeus VM, for example, a Zeus license source code from Oracle. If you're using OpenJDK, you can run your application on top of OpenJDK, no problem. You don't have to worry about the GPL to run your applications. There's a lot of developers contributing to OpenJDK, so I think this is, for you as a Java developer, it doesn't change that much, right? What might change is, I don't know, this whole process might get Oracle and Google to get to an agreement at some point. It would be nice to have a compatible VM on Android. I'm pretty sure it would be nice. But on the other hand, I'm not sure if Oracle forces their licensing schema on Android, if the Android ecosystem will run the same way it does today. So it's exactly what's going to happen will depend a lot of what comes out of this process. Now, next question that Edison had was, what is the role of the JCP in this contest? So the JCP is the body that defines the APIs, right? So there's 37 packages that were referenced in the ruling. Those are defined by the JCP. So the first thing is the JCP is not only Oracle. Oracle is a big part of it. Actually, the larger part of the JCP is Oracle. I mean, the larger part of the Java APIs were defined by Oracle. But basically, the JCP gives the right to the spec lead. And there's a lot of spec leads. You know, IBM is a spec lead of several specifications. Red Hat is a spec lead of several specifications. And there's a lot of other spec leads from different specifications out there. And so basically, the way the JCP works is that everyone that contributes to a specific JSR, to a specific specification, basically assigns their copyright to the spec lead. So they not just assign their copyright, they actually give a license to the spec lead to use their contribution. The spec leads aggregates all of those contributions and put a license on it and distribute this license, distributes the specification under this license. So basically, that's the way that the spec lead aggregates both patents and copyrights into a specification, so everyone can actually use that specification later on. As I said before, if you are an implementer of a Java specification, you need to follow the copyrights and the licensing of the specification. And the license of the specification basically is that you have a license to implement if you pass on the TCK, if you create a compatible implementation. So that's the thing you gotta do to be on the JCP. So the JCP really has nothing to do with this lawsuit, right? Because who is the aggregator of the Java specification is Oracle. So Oracle, as the spec lead, is the company that has the rights of the spec, and it's Oracle that is suing Google for the specification. Of course, the JCP is not an independent organization. JCP is a department of Oracle. We understand that, but the JCP has its own rules, and the rules of the JCP have nothing to do with this lawsuit, right? Actually, if Google had followed the rules of the JCP and had implemented the specification and had passed it on the TCK, then Google, Oracle could not sue Google, right? Because everyone on the JCP has the rights to use the specification under this situation. You could argue that the license that Oracle offers as the spec lead, the license that Oracle offers for Java, that would prevent Google from doing a few things, right? Yes, I'm sure you would. It definitely prevents Google from creating a non-compatible implementation, right? So, so that's a business decision, I guess, right? If Google agrees or doesn't agree, it's a business decision. And I think this whole point, this whole discussion, this whole lawsuit actually hangs on business decision, right? Oracle licenses their technology. Oracle aggregates a lot of contributions and put in Java and licenses that Java in 3 different ways. Google may not agree with the way that Oracle's licensing, so Google just took a business decision to not follow any of those ways, and Oracle considers that this business decision that Google took hurts Oracle's business. So that's the whole discussion that's going on right now. So I think that's what I think that's the role of the JCP is that the JCP actually creates a safe environment for those things to happen, right? So the way the JCP works is that without the JCP, you have to license those things from a company, right? So basically, if the JCP didn't exist, then Oracle would license that technology to whoever they wanted, right? They would say, no, Google, you are my competitor. I'm not going to license to you, or maybe I don't know, some other company that's Oracle's competitor, like for example IBM. So Oracle could say, no, IBM, I'm not going to license that to you because you are my competitor. With the JCP rules, anyone can get a license. Right? Anyone can get a license. The specs are public. Anyone can get a license to this spec as long as they decide to implement compatibility. So, Oracle cannot say, "Oh, you're my competitor, I'm not going to license that to you." And I think this is extremely positive, right? I think that's a very one of the very good benefits of the JCP. Now, and so so I think so. Now, the one thing that's interesting to say is that the JCP is just one of the licensing forms, right? I think Google could have dealt directly with Oracle. I think actually the ruling tells a story that I'm not sure that's if where this story came from. I'm not sure if that's a story from the emails of the case, or if that's a story told by the Oracle lawyers. I'm not sure exactly where the story came from, but on the ruling, the story that says that Google was negotiating with Sun, and that Sun was willing to license the code directly to Google under whatever terms that Google was comfortable with, or maybe they weren't comfortable with, I guess. But Sun insisted on the compatibility requirements, and then the ruling says that Google did not accept that because Google was not interested on the compatibility, and then Google decided to implement their own thing. I'm just if you read the ruling, that's the story that's there. And I think that on the Java community, compatibility is a big thing. I understand why Sun decided not to license to Google because of the compatibility issues, and I think that the JCP is the body that discusses and defines what this compatibility means, and I think that it has a very positive role on that regard. So I'm not sure. I don't see any more questions. I'll mark this question as done. I'm not sure how much that answered this particular question, but there's a few other things that I would like to say here. Is one of that I do like to ever since this suing process is started, I like to refer to a friend of mine essay that is from Simon Phipps. Simon Phipps wrote this essay that's called Reptiles. So go search on the web Simon Phipps and reptiles, and you're gonna see that the Simon Phipps talks about makes a parallel between corporations and crocodiles, and he basically says that it is on the nature of crocodiles to just bite their food and kill their food, right? And you can't trust crocodiles, right? Because it doesn't matter how long you deal with them, they will just bite you whenever they have the chance. So and Simon Phipps kind of compares this to corporations, that corporations have their own agendas, and they are not good or bad. I mean they're just corporations, right? And I think we have to understand that basically what we're seeing here right now is a battle between two crocodiles, right? And we're in the middle of it, right? And I personally think that whoever wins, we kind of lose somehow, right? So I do understand that so Oracle on the ruling, Oracle did say that that they think that Java is an important technology, blah blah, and that they will defend the community, etc. And for all I know, they are trying to be to do that, to defend their product, their intellectual property. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure that Google is trying to protect their own community also, right? It's trying to protect the Android community, and we can debate here who is protecting in the right way or who is not protecting, but basically they are crocodiles and they are protecting their own interests, and I think that's part of what we're trying to do, is how can we work with crocodiles in a way that our interests are maintained, right? Because that's the other thing, right? Is it possible to work with companies and corporations in a good way? I think it is. I think that participate on the JCP and creating specifications that are specifically open for everyone to use. Participate on the OpenJDK project and contributing code that is GPL code that others can benefit from. I think those are ways that we can participate, that we can, because basically through those process, we do have a clear relationship with those corporations, right? So I think that it is good for us to participate like this. So one of the questions that were being asked in the Java Group's leaders mailing list is, should I keep trusting Java? Should I keep writing Java code? And should I keep participating on the OpenJDK? Should I participate on the Adopt-a-JSR program? And should I still contribute? Oh, Oracle is this evil company, and blah blah blah, and I don't want to participate in anything like that. Well, the way I see it is that yes, you should continue to participate, right? Because Java is beneficial from all of us. I mean, for all of us. So it's a great technology. It's a great language. It has a whole lot of IP from many companies inside it. IBM contributed, Oracle, Sun, SAP, Azure, Red Hat. There's a whole lot of companies that contributed IP to this platform. I think it's a huge ecosystem. They say 90 million Java developers, a whole lot of tools, a whole lot of APIs, a whole lot of libraries, and your your code is there, right? So you invested your time, you invested for you to learn, for you to use a IDE, you bought products, you develop code on top of it. So a lot of your intellectual property is on top of Java. So I think it is worth to defend and fight for this technology, right? Now, we may disagree what is the best way to defend and fight for it. You may think that the best way is, I don't know, it's Oracle thinks the best way is suing Google. You may think that the best way is getting mad at Oracle. I mean, we can disagree on how is the best way to defend that particular ecosystem. But it is an ecosystem that benefits all of us, right? So I think we all have to understand what is the best way for us to contribute. And I think that contributing through clear processes, under clear licensing, it is the best way for us to do this. So there is a clear process that is the JCP, right? We're trying to improve. So you're seeing here me from SoJava, Martin from the London Java community. There is Mohammed from Mohoko JUG. There's the Clips Foundation. There's a lot of people are involved on the JCP. So if we are working to improve the JCP process. We are right now today. We are here in London on the JCP meeting to try to discuss and improve the JCP. So we are trying to make this relationship between Oracle and the community a clear one, right? So the JCP does impose some rules and some and some things that needs to be done, right? So once a specification is created, it is open to everyone. Anyone can implement it, right? We may disagree with the specific details, but it is a clear process that we can follow. So by having that, then you don't have to worry about Oracle doing the right thing, because you know what's going to happen. You know how the process is going to work. That's why the Adopt-a-JSR is so important, because when you participate in this process, we all make our participation grows, and we are all part of it. So we have a stake in the process, and we can defend and fight for the best thing. Also, OpenJDK is an open source GPL based project. So by participating on OpenJDK, by following the GPL rules, you're also contributing. So, for example, we have Otávio Santana from SoJava that's it's contributing for the OpenJDK. I was talking with Otávio a couple of days ago, and he has more than 8,000 lines of code, of code on the commits that were already accepted on OpenJDK. That's a pretty substantial commitment from Otávio to participate in OpenJDK, and he's just one of the many people that are working and participating. So I think that this investment needs to be, we need to fight for this investment. And if you participate in OpenJDK, there is a clear set of rules, right? You need to sign the OCA. You need to, you need to contribute your code. Your code will be available under GPL with class path exception license. I mean, there's specific rules, and that's the thing that we should make sure that those rules are reasonable. Those rules are just, right? So we can trust that whoever's participating in this process is actually following the rules. So I think it's really important, this kind of discussion, that we all understand exactly where we stand. We can always improve, right? We can improve the OpenJDK project. We can improve the process. We can improve the JCP. We can change. We can fight Oracle to change the things. You might even disagree that APIs should be non-copyrightable. I think that if you think the API should not be copyrightable, I think that you should fight that on the U.S. Government, right? I think if the courts are saying that APIs are copyrightable, change the law, right? I think that us developers, we should go after the things that we think is true. And I don't know exactly how the justice process works in the U.S. I'll find out a little bit more about APIs in other countries to see if it's different somewhere else. But basically, I think that if we think that this has to be needs to be changed, I think we should go after to change it. But from what I understand from the ruling is not defining that APIs are copyrightable. I think the ruling is accepting that APIs are copyrightable, that software is copyrightable, and that Google that's actually what the ruling says. So I think we all have to understand what that means and try to make the best of it. So I really think that yes, you should continue supporting Java. There's a lot of investment. It's your investment. There's a lot of countries out there that depend on Java. I know in Brazil, for example, the Brazilian government has a lot of use for Java. So I think there is a lot of benefits, and I think we can find. Now, if we are Java developers and we believe that the technology that we are using is the best one, we did learn how to use IDEs. We did learn how to use all those APIs that are being disputed right here. Maybe we also should, we should pressure Oracle to be more open. Yes, but maybe we should also pressure Google to implement a fully compatible Java implementation. I think it's totally on Google's possibility. They are almost there. There's a whole lot of source code from Java that runs directly on Dalvik. Wouldn't it be cool to have a full Java compatible VM on Android? I think it would be great. What's missing, right? Is Google not talking to Oracle? Is Oracle not agreeing to what Google wants? I think that's maybe we should go after those questions, right? What is that Google actually wants, right? How can we make the Android ecosystem compatible with Java? I think that might be we have now. A lot of people are saying that if you get Oracle, Google Android is still stuck on Java 1.6, I think. We have Java 7, we have Java 8, we now have Java ME 8. Maybe all those new features of Java could be present in Android. Wouldn't that be cool? I think that would be great. So I'm not sure how that could happen. I have no idea, right? I think that Oracle and Google would have to talk, but some people think that that's not going to happen. So no, yeah, I think that the more we get informed about things, the more we're going to be able to understand what's really going on. But I honestly, right now, I've talked with some people about this whole copyright thing, and oh, APIs are copyrightable or not copyrightable. It doesn't look like there is a huge effect on the whole open source ecosystem. No, the open source is not going to change. You're not going to see a whole lot of projects closing their doors because APIs are copyrightable. It's not like this. It's definitely not like this. It's not. The world is not coming to an end, right? And this is not going to be decided right now. It's still some ways to go. And I think that the whole plan is for us to have more of those conversations so we can all find the best way to fight Oracle or to discuss things, or to fight Oracle, fight Google. I think us as developers, we have a very, very strong power. We decided what we want to use for our development. So I think that we should go knock on the JCP, knock on Oracle, knock on Google, and say, guys, you have to get your act together, because we want, that's what we want. We want an easy to use, fully compatible, available everywhere, Java virtual machine. And if Oracle's policies doesn't allow that, Oracle needs to change it. If Google's policies or licensing doesn't allow that, I think we have to force Google to change it. And I've already talked too much. I was kind of waiting if anyone else had any questions. I hope that that all of those questions, all of those things kind of help it a little bit. I think we can do some other discussion like this in the near future. I know Martin is writing a blog post. I'm also writing a blog post. So we're going to try to get some more information out for you. And and if you're a Java user group leader, and please send more questions to the mailing list, and we're continuing this conversation. Okay. I'll talk one more phrase here to give one more chance for anyone to ask a question. No? All right. So I'd like to thank everyone to participate. I'd like to thank the guys that asked the questions, and especially would like to thank you that is participating, that is improving Java, that is fighting for Java. Even when you get mad with vendors, this is a good thing, right? You're getting mad because you believe, because you know that this thing is important for you. So I think that whenever we get mad or get upset, I think we need to talk, and I think we need to go knock on our vendor's door, just say what we need, what we want. Okay? Thanks a lot, guys. Hey, Drono. Hey, Juggy. What are you doing here? Hey, guys. How are you doing? This is Juggy here. I was just hearing everything. So, Juggy, do you have a stake in this situation? I like Java user groups. So, guys, keep fighting. We all need you. Okay, guys. See ya. Bye.